Hello, my name is Jennifer Young, and today we'll be discussing modern leadership and conflict management issues in the workplace by taking an in depth look at my case study Effective Leadership. The struggle is real. Let's start with a story. Once upon a time, there was a wise man who used to go to the ocean to do his writing. He had a habit of walking on the beach before he began his work. One day, as he was walking along the shore, he looked down at the beach and saw a human figure moving like a dancer. He smiled to himself at the thought of someone who had danced to the day, and so he walked faster to catch up. As he got closer, he noticed that the figure was that of a young man, and that what he was doing was not dancing at all. The young man was reaching down to the shore, picking up small objects and throwing them into the ocean. He came closer still and called out, "Good morning. May I ask what it is that you're doing?" The young man paused, looked up, and replied, "Throwing starfish into the ocean." "I must ask, then, why are you throwing starfish into the ocean?" asked the somewhat startled wise man. To this, the young man replied, "The sun is up, and the tide is going out. If I don't throw them in, they'll die." Upon hearing this, the wise man commented, "But, young man, do you not realize that you are miles and miles of beach and there are starfish all along every mile? You can't possibly make a difference." At this, the young man bent down, picked up yet another starfish, and threw it into the ocean. As it met the water, he said, "It made a difference to that one." This case study begins with Sally asking herself a very tough question, a question I believe many ask themselves when they are managing employees and leading others. Am I making a difference? Managers are often seen as leaders within the workplace. However, the idea that a titled manager is a good and effective leader has been challenged since the 20th century. Does Sally's position as a manager mean she is effective at leading her team and resolving conflict? Is Sally making the positive and impactful difference she hopes for? Conflict often arises in the workplace, and leaders, typically a manager, are frequently faced with situations that need to be resolved. While generally not regarded as a positive experience, conflict can actually be a key opportunity to create change that will reduce friction in the workplace. We can begin to gauge leadership, effective management, and diffuse conflict by understanding what they are and implementing some practical strategies to manage them. A natural part of the workplace experience is conflict. People do not see eye to eye on everything and often dig in and defend their positions when individuals do not see the world in the same way they do. The trap we fall into is assuming that conflict is a battle that must be won at all costs, rather than viewing the situation as an opportunity to move in a more effective direction. Managers can benefit greatly by understanding that conflict is something that does not go away unless it is resolved. Conflict signals an issue that needs to be addressed. And once we understand that conflict is telling us that there is something that needs attention in our organization, we can begin to implement a strategy to fix it. Effective leaders and effective organizations categorize conflict management practices by recognizing 4 frames: structure, human resources, politics, and symbols. Addressing the different components that each frame might contribute to a situation is vital. Utilization of a multi-frame structure is required to identify leadership practices and conflict resolution processes. There are different components that come into play when attempting to resolve a conflict. Those components allow us to figure out what is going on and to work together to arrive at a mutually beneficial resolution. These different parts can be generalized by identifying a few main ideas: naming the issue, understanding each person's point of view, brainstorming possible solutions together, and selecting a solution that all parties agree on. Noticing that each component leads into the next with each piece increasing understanding of a balance between concern for self and concern for others. This is Sally. Sally is a manager at a small home organizing company. The company utilizes small teams of 2 or 3 people, one project manager, and at least one organizer to accomplish weekly organizing projects. These projects range from decluttering to completely revamping organization structure in homes. These projects require a patented style of organizing and arranging items within the space, as well as regular connection and follow-up with Sally and the client to ensure success. Sally has constantly fought to connect with her employees, to get them to follow instructions and be productive. Sally is a productive employee who loves her job and feels she is at a loss for moving beyond these conflicts, reoccurring issues she has struggled with over the past 10 years. Sally has identified 3 areas of conflict that she struggles to address. The first issue is that Sally cannot physically be present at every project site to oversee the quality of every project. Each one has a different element and often requires an individual plan to ensure success. Timelines needed to be submitted, updates need to happen, and sections need to be completed. Those are all established before the start of a project. Sally regularly has trouble getting project managers to follow timelines. As she explains it, it seems that her employees, they just don't care about what she's telling them. Her management and leadership style for getting project managers to stick to the timeline and submit required materials on time consisted of direct and repetitive requests for information. She would send a text, make a phone call, send an email, and repeat until she was finally able to get what she was needing. But she was not always successful at that. Ultimately, she felt like a broken record, having to constantly and repeatedly nag for updates. Ultimately, if she did not get the information she needed, it would have to be overlooked, or she would make a trip to the project site and inspect in person. Issue 2. She struggled with project managers following through with clients after a project is complete to ensure there is no business left unattended. Often, there is a lingering piece to a project that must be addressed after it has been technically completed. An example of this could be that an ordered item did not come in until after the project end date, or a needed item was identified during the project and needed to be ordered and addressed at a different time. Sally struggled to get her project managers to follow up on these requests and responsibilities. Sally would often discover this problem via phone call from the client requesting a status update. Again, Sally's process for addressing this issue consisted of direct and repetitive asking for information. Another strategy had for dealing with the conflict was taking on all of the responsibility herself. Ultimately, though, this did not often work in her favor because it led to project managers continuing to neglect this responsibility because they knew Sally would do it herself. It also increased her workload and put a rift in her success because she had too many items to keep track of. The third issue is that Sally struggles with onboarding new employees. New employees often felt they were being constantly criticized for doing the wrong thing. The reality being that there is a specific way things need to be done, and it's important they learn the proper way to complete projects. Her tactics for addressing this conflict consisted of giving new employees room to make suggestions on how they think things should be done. This would often result in them learning on their own why their idea will not work rather than Sally telling them it will not work, which usually created a struggle. Sally does not consider herself a fluffy and bubbly person, so she made a concentrated effort to praise and encourage success as much as possible. It is in this area that Sally had the most tools for addressing the issue. However, she was still largely unsuccessful at effectively onboarding new employees because As they progress through their employment, they continue to lack the skills needed to follow instruction properly and keep on track with projects. So what now? Sally feels she has tried everything she knows to provide proper training and encouragement to help boost effectiveness and productivity amongst her employees and project managers. But employees still have trouble following directions and staying on track. This chronic issue has led to disciplinary actions by Sally, continued frustrations by employees, and the nature of working in a small company in small groups with little direct management oversight means the employees have ample time to ruminate frustrations and spread toxic behaviors. One tactic Sally tried in an effort to address toxic behavior was giving employees permission to express what frustrated them. Sally felt that if she addressed the fact that she recognized an employee seemed frustrated and gave them a platform to help express those concerns, that would help alleviate gossiping and ruminating toxic behavior. But this did not seem to solve the problem in the way she had hoped. Sally feels she is not able to get through to her employees and is not making a meaningful impact as far as her ability to lead her team and manage effectively. She has had a hard time understanding why her employees feel they do not have to do the tasks she has assigned them to complete. She realizes that in order to build an effective team, she has to have her employees, especially the project managers, on board, but does not know how to do it. She knows that using the employees she already has will look better and ultimately benefit the company more than firing everyone and starting fresh, but having exhausted all the tools in her tool belt, how does she accomplish this? It's important to measure first that managers benefit greatly from putting in place some key elements that lead to successful conversations, such as meeting at a mutually convenient time, no distractions or interruptions allowed, no agendas, a calm environment, and unrestricted time to talk. When we set up an environment conducive to relaxed conversation, we create a greater likelihood of success. A small investment in time up front to talk in depth can more than make up for the countless lost hours and costs devoted to ongoing conflict. The benefit of learning how to resolve conflicts in a methodical and systematic way is that it takes the guesswork out of fixing solutions. When we work on understanding others' points of view and collaborating on solutions, we move in the direction of finding solutions that work for everyone. Sure, it takes some time on the upfront, but the payoff is dramatic in the long run. The business world presents us enough challenges without having to deal with chronic conflict. By understanding what conflict is and following some basic strategies, we can build a workplace that thrives on collaboration and effective conflict resolution. Before we dive into how to teach the case, let's take a moment to review it. The first struggle represents the issue of keeping employees motivated and on track while working under minimal supervision. Sally has not been able to find an effective way to reach her employees, so they understand the importance of submitting updates on time, which improves the quality of their projects. The second struggle represents the issue of employees not following up with clients in the proper manner. Sally has not been able to find an effective way to ensure that her employees follow up with clients as needed. This has caused Sally to take on this task and as such creates too much of a workload for her. The third issue represents ineffective onboarding of new employees. Sally has been unable to develop effective onboarding practices so that her employees feel confident and comfortable in the new work they are doing. This case is written primarily for use in organizational leadership and/or education. It focuses on ineffective managerial strategies and how they relate to effective leadership practices. The idea being that there is a lack of good leadership skills being used to properly manage employees. Conflict resolution and leadership go hand in hand when working as a manager in an organization. This case is meant to inspire strategic problem solving for improvement rather than interpret an overview of what is being done well. The case is designed to represent a common struggle that many managers face when dealing with their employees: conflict relating to motivation and understanding. Motivated, connected, happy employees are often more effective for an organization, and the notion that being a manager means quality and effective leadership skills is challenged, and focus is directed at bringing attention in common managerial issues as they relate to quality of leadership. This denies the misconception that managers and leadership mean the same thing by observing ways that leadership has been ineffective. An understanding of improving leadership practices as they pertain to addressing multiple frames of an organization can be addressed. These are the learning objectives we are going to review, the things that you can hope to get out of teaching this case to others. Next, we'll talk about theoretical foundations. First, we're going to be looking at improved leadership practice. This is grounded in the work of Bowman and Deal, and the case allows students to understand ineffective leadership styles and develop a framework for discovering better leadership practices as they pertain to managing an organization. There are several parts to improve leadership practice, and we can look at that from a structural frame and structural leadership. We can look at it from a human resources frame and human resource leadership, a political frame and political leadership, and the same for the symbolic frame. We can also look at different leadership styles and roles. This is grounded in the understanding that different leadership styles and how you play a role in them can be effective in different circumstances. Don't underestimate the importance of understanding your own leadership style. Next, we want to have a solid understanding of your employees. This is grounded in the understanding of different psychological models. Managers can drastically improve their positive effectiveness by developing better connections with their employees. Organization culture is important also, and this is grounded in the understanding of culture in an organization and how that culture is created, fostered, and changed. How can this be addressed and changed to be positive as much as possible for an organization? Culture is a distinctive pattern of beliefs, values, practices, and artifacts developed over time. And this determines and defines for an organization different members in the organization and how they do things. Next, we have an understanding of conflict resolution, and that while conflict isn't usually a positive thing, it can encourage necessary change and define best practices. There are several types of conflict resolution that we can have and use. Also, employee best practices. This is grounded in the understanding that employees are the most effective for an organization when hiring, onboarding, and placement best practices are used. Managers must take the time to choose the right employees for the right positions and align employees in the most effective ways. Next, we'll look at 6 different discussion questions. The first: what leadership style does Sally use with her employees? What is effective about them and what is not? This question is designed to get students to analyze what leadership style Sally is using with her team. Sally's style incorporates several different leadership practices that may or may not be effective, and it's important for students to recognize them. Sally's fallback leadership style is blunt, direct communication. When she needs something from an employee, she asks for it over and over again until she receives what she needs. While this leadership style can be effective in some cases, students should recognize that it is largely ineffective when it is the only tool you use to connect with your employees. When onboarding new employees, Sally identifies several ways in which she tries to connect with those she is training so that they do not feel like they are always doing something wrong. Students should be able to identify the positives that can come from letting employees express their own creativity and ideas while being able to implement effective practices for making sure they follow the rules of the organization. Next, what can Sally improve about her leadership abilities? This question is designed to help students address what personal initiatives Sally can take to improve her leadership style and abilities. As is evident from the case, Sally has a small set of resources to use when dealing with the employees at her organization. There are many personal reflective steps Sally can take to recognize the leader within herself. It is here that students can begin to identify how Sally can be a more effective leader for her employees. Specific ways that Sally can improve her leadership abilities include taking time to understand her leadership story, who she is now, and where she has come from. She should reflect on the type of leader she is and decide if that's the kind of leader she wants to be moving forward. Taking the reflective time to identify and understand your leadership story is an important first step to being able to improve your leadership abilities. Sally could also benefit from understanding the different hats of leadership and how they contribute to her overall role as a manager, a supervisor, a coach, a trainer, and a mentor. What role does she play in the case above, and how can she improve in each area? The next question, what employee practices can Sally implement to ensure she has the right people in the right position? There are many ideas related to hiring and placement best practices. The intent here is for students to begin to understand that poor practices related to hiring and employee placement might contribute to the issues that Sally is having. Students can work to identify how Sally can improve what employees she hires from the get-go and how employees move up in the company to become project managers. The idea being that students can identify that Sally does not have the right people in the right positions and analyze how that is detrimental to the organization. Students should be able to provide solutions to Sally's hiring and placement practices. Next, let's talk about how Sally can overcome the burden of feeling like her employees are unmotivated. Here, students can analyze why the employees at Sally's organization are unmotivated. They can work to provide solutions that improve organizational culture and minimize ruminating toxic behavior. A manager must become aware of the importance of understanding her people, and understanding the psychological concepts can greatly help promote productivity and professional development. Specific ways Sally can increase motivation amongst her employees include developing an understanding of IR theory, which means identity and role. The IR theory represents the dual nature of our lives. Each of us has an I and an R. Our I represents our values, beliefs, principles, desires, and emotions, our inner selves. Our R is made up of the many roles we play in our lives, or our outer selves. These roles include son, daughter, friend, student, salesperson, etc. A person's core identity, their self-image, is almost always a 10. While each person might be a 10 at their identity level, their role level might not be a 10. The danger is that the 1 to 10 level will become contaminated by the lower R, and the individual will begin to see herself in terms of a lower I. As a manager, you must address the R while preserving the I, and work to prevent blurring the lines between the two. When an individual views herself as less than a 10, she will often limit her functioning in various roles to less. Next, Sally can develop an understanding of transactional analysis. This is a psychological theory that divides the human personality into 3 ego states: parent, adult, and child. Every person as such, every manager demonstrates these different ego states, and it's important to recognize what state you might be in and what state you should be in and how it might affect those you manage. Lastly, Sally can develop an understanding of DISC. DISC is a behavioral model that is used to categorize the way people interact. It takes its name from 4 principatory styles: dominant, influencer, steady relator, and compliant. A person's style of interaction involves more than the way he deals with other people. It also affects the way the person processes information and deals with emotions, as well as the kinds of activities or jobs the person prefers and how she completes them. DISC is an assessment that can be taken by anyone and can help a manager identify her own style and the style of her employees. The next question: how can Sally connect with her employees to make sure they submit information without constantly having to ask them for what she needs? This question is designed to engage students in identifying what Sally can do to improve her relationship with her employees and get them on track with submitting requests on time. Here, students can build off of question 1. They can identify why Sally's leadership style of blunt, direct communication isn't getting the job done. They can work to address what she can do in combination with her communication style to improve her leadership here. By better understanding her people, as addressed in question 4, Sally can connect with her employees more effectively. This would directly impact her ability to positively influence her employees to submit information on time. The last question: what conflict resolution practices can Sally implement to ensure success at her organization? This is a culmination of all the previous sections, or of all the previous questions. Once Sally's leadership, positive and negatives, have been identified and analyzed, it is here that students can begin to apply conflict resolution strategies for Sally and her employees. Students can understand that leadership and conflict resolution are 2 different things. Even the best leaders still come up against conflict. But when you shift the scenario from poor or uninformed leadership to good leadership, conflict resolution can come to the forefront and be addressed in the most successful way. Students should be encouraged to brainstorm the conflict resolution practices based on the 5 common strategies identified in the theoretical theories. Students can discuss implementations and outcomes of each strategy and choose which one might be the most practical. It is important to remember that there is not a one-size-fits-all solution, and each of Sally's conflicts could utilize 1 or more conflict resolution strategies. Have students create examples of what implementing each solution should look like. I hope you enjoyed this case. Hopefully it'll help guide many fruitful discussions on leadership, management, and conflict resolution. Thanks for your time.